This is the first of these sort of video essays that I'm doing, so please forgive me if I sound a little, I don't know, stilted at times, and let me know in the comments below what changes or improvements I could be making. Please do that kindly, but please let me know what changes, what could be different, what could be fixed, that sort of thing. I'm interested in improving this, doing that 1% better with each video. Let's dive in. Sandy says read, and welcome to the channel. We're going to do something a little different today. This is a video essay titled Sci-Fi and Fantasy Get Blended for a Frustrating Shelf. I'm coining the phrase pure ink for this essay. We have the opportunity to highlight pure ink fantasy works, like those of J.R.R. Tolkien, and we have the opportunity to highlight pure ink science fiction works, like those of Larry Niven. Now, I could have listed a few dozen others, but that's not the point of this essay. The point is, we also have the opportunity to enjoy mixing science fiction and fantasy, like Sandy Lender's Dragons in Space series. Again, you can list a million examples below. The point is, we can enjoy both the raw, pure ink of each genre and the blending of the two within a story. Or we can avoid any of the three options as our tastes demand. And I think it's going to become more of a treasure hunt to find new voices of any of the above. Let's dive in by first looking back. In the 1900s, Lawrence Spivak had a publishing house called Mercury Press. A subsidiary of the house began publishing the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction in 1949. The editors were Anthony Boucher and J. Francis McComas. It's officially abbreviated F&SF. The thing is, the magazine was called the Magazine of Fantasy at first. It was a couple months in before the editors blended the presentation for the audience. Weird Tales had already existed for fantasy stories. It started in 1923. And there was a sci-fi magazine called Amazing Stories that started up in 1926. We had Astounding Stories of Super Science magazine that started in 1930. Now let's fast forward to 2025. Locus Online reported in March on a significant event from February. Must Reads Book Publishing purchased F&SF. It also purchased Asimov's Science Fiction, Analog Science Fiction and Fact, Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine, and Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. I'll put a link to that announcement down below. Having been in magazine and other publishing since 1992, I can tell you this will bring changes, no matter what the new group publisher says. Those changes could be as simple as bulk advertising rates across multiple assets and channels, or the changes could be consolidation of titles that are being distributed in retail stores, or any number of other money-making initiatives large publishing entities must implement to survive. What we've enjoyed over the past century are examples of the two genres, sci-fi and fantasy, standing alone from the beginning and being blended in presentation to the public from the beginning. The blending might happen more going forward because, as we can see, the blending has gained popularity over the years. You can see this in magazines, conventions, fan clubs, movies, and so on today. Notably, and what we'll address in this essay, we see the blending on bookstore shelves. I've personally lost faith in the big five traditional publishing houses. Whether we should blame literary agents with societal credit score gatekeeping agendas, in addition to the time-honored elitist gatekeeping of the past few decades, we have to face the fact today's science fiction stories, fantasy stories, and blended stories have agendas hidden within them. You must either ignore the agenda and suppress whatever ick you're getting from a sarcastic main character and her 17 problematic love interests, or you have to look for a different book. Given the selection on the shelves of the regional Barnes & Noble, all those books are about the same. And I see that as a failure of the big five traditional publishing houses today. And that's where we're going next in our discussion. The bookshelves at Barnes& Noble, Books A Million, Waterstones, Target, Walmart, and so on, they all have similar offerings depending on the region. If they have a section for science fiction, it's grouped with fantasy. This is the way. Personally, I, author Sandy Lender, don't mind the two being grouped together. I can usually tell the difference between a spaceship or alien image on a front cover and a sword or dragon on a front cover, signaling the genre for me. I can also pick up the book and read the back cover to get a deeper understanding of the genre, potential plot, potential hook, main character, and so on. From there, I'll open to the first page and make sure we're not in first person present tense. Now, I understand why the sci-fi bros are fussy about the science fiction and fantasy sections being presented together in bookstores these days. It's a function of what the big five publishers have done to us. The romantasy and borderline erotica fantasy stories have taken over part of the section. Brandon Sanderson gets the rest. And I'm exaggerating a little. What's left for the science fiction fans who have stepped in from the sweltering summer heat, hoping to pick up a good book to read by the window AC unit? Now, I posit we have to request it. I say go to the customer service desk and put in the order. Is it going to take 2 weeks to arrive? Probably. The instant gratification is gone. But you're training the Barnes & Noble computer to recognize there are sci-fi readers walking into that location. And that matters. If enough of us do it, that matters more. I don't mean to negate the feelings of the folks who hate the blended presentation of sci-fi and fantasy. Just because I have this trite suggestion of request what you want, it doesn't mean I have no heart. I can see why the sci-fi bros are fussy. It's like being upset with the fantasy magic ending of the science fiction movie source code. Sometimes an author or a director will surprise the reader or the viewer with one genre's presence within the other genre. You weren't expecting it. You didn't realize a magic MacGuffin was going to solve the problem in a sci-fi time loop story. You feel betrayed when you go to the store and the placard reads sci-fi fantasy and everything on the shelf looks like a mix of aliens and dragons and ships and swords. You want one or the other, and you want the clear delineation. The problem is sometimes the delineation is not so clear. Sometimes you have a Dragon Riders of Pern situation where the bookstore manager might be tempted to put the series in the fantasy section, and a customer wearing a Starfleet Academy t-shirt will launch into a dissertation on why Anne's books should be in the sci-fi section instead. Now, please understand, I'm not actually picking on Trekkies. I am a moderate one myself. Okay, so does this mean we have a mixed section in bookstores for the convenience of bookstore managers? No. I think we're back to the big five trad publishing problem again. And again, it's dismissal of the audience that typically enjoys pure ink science fiction and pure ink fantasy. I'm not trying to say women don't read and enjoy these genres or watch these movies and shows. I am saying the audience for these genres has, historically, been male. And whether we like it or not, the big five trad publishers have not been very interested in what male readers want. Is that because they believe men aren't buying books anymore? Well, they certainly believe men aren't buying books at the same rate as women and young girls who get excited about sarcastic bitch main characters with 17 problematic love interests. Thus, I understand why the sci-fi bros are fussy about the bookshelf situation in bookstores today. I understand why the blending of science fiction and fantasy presentation causes angst. But I have a three-part solution. As I mentioned already, when we go into a bookstore that doesn't have the new release we want to read, we can request it. Let's go to the customer service desk or the manager and say, I want to order this new book by this author. Here's my credit card. How soon can it be here? Will you text me when it comes in? And so on. The second idea is to seek out your local bookstore. The indie bookstore will not be the same as the chain store, obviously. The indie bookstore will most likely have a section of books, fiction and non, that are relevant to your area and state. Then you're likely to find a section of books by local authors, whether those authors are big names, local celebrities, or new to the scene indie authors hoping to make a little splash in their hometown. As you peruse the shelves of an indie bookshop, you're going to find the big five fancy new releases that have been shipped to every store in the known universe. But you're also going to find the hidden gems that no one else has heard of yet. The third idea, my friends, is to bypass the big five completely with indies. I want you to set aside any preconceptions you have about indie for a moment and consider this definition. Indie authors are those who have found a way other than traditional agent plus marketing team to get their work into the world. This makes the indie author an entrepreneur with a high level of initiative and creativity. I know it's scary for some readers to consider, but indie authors have been perfecting their craft for decades now. Indie authors have been taking online classes, getting MFAs in creative writing, attending creative writing workshops. They've been subscribing to the SNSF, to Weird Tales, to Asimov, to Realms of Fantasy, to World Literature, to Writer's Digest, and other publications. They've been working with critique partners and beta readers. They've been hiring editors or working with indie publishing houses who have editors, and they're finding all manner of ways to get their manuscript from first draft to second, to third, to arc, to final. There are indie authors out there with astounding stories of super science and more. To find them, you can do a quick search of indie authors on most any social media platform and start weeding out the unprofessional ones pretty easily. You can go to a science fiction or creatives convention. I highly recommend Imaginarium in Louisville. There you'll find tables of indie authors with their books on display. It's usually easy to differentiate the authors who have done the entire process alone and those who have worked with an editor, whether they self-published or had an indie publishing house take them on. The genius of seeking out indie authors in the science fiction and fantasy realms is this. They aren't thinking the exact same way all the traditionally published big names are thinking. The reason behind that is simple. Their ideas are too far out there for a literary agent to have accepted it and taken it beyond the gate they keep. Now, there are a few dozen other reasons an individual will take the self-publishing or indie house route, but a big reason is their work is too heady, it's too esoteric, it's too far outside the box, it's too far beyond the mainstream for the big five to consider it. And now, isn't that what Mercury Press was after nearly a century ago? Those strange tales that were far beyond? You, as the reader, can still enjoy both the raw, pure ink of science fiction stories or the raw, pure ink of fantasy stories. Or you can enjoy the blending of the two within a story. With the newly developing structure of magazines at Must Reads Book Publishing and the availability of indie authors, you can embark on a treasure hunt for new-to-you voices of any of the above. You don't have to rely on a frustrating shelf at the chain store in the neighboring town. Let me know if you enjoyed this essay format in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts about the blending of these genres in stories. Let me know if you've ever requested a specific new book at your local chain store versus your local indie bookstore. How did that go? And are you open to reading outside the box stories by indie authors? Thumbs up for expanding the treasure house of stories that are available. And thank you so much for tuning in.